welcome everybody. My name is Manpreet and your webinar will begin shortly. The speaker is on standby. Before we begin, few ground rules for those who may be joining us for the first time. Please use the chat box area to interact with the speaker. If you have a question in particular, please use the question and answer icon so that the speaker knows. This session is being recorded and will later be shared on all our social media handles. So if you find it valuable and informative, you can come back and share it with your loved ones later on. It's also being streamed live on YouTube. Now a little bit about Asian Institute of Design. Asian Institute of Design, or AID as we like to call ourselves, the college that started back in 2008, and we offer undergraduate and diploma courses in art, gaming, animation, design, and now we are also venturing into emerging technologies like artificial intelligence and machine learning. One of the things that makes us proud as an institution is the kind of work that our alumni have been able to put out in the industry. We are proud to say that our alumni have been part of prestigious global projects. Recently speaking, Oscar-winning movie Jungle Book. We're proud to say that our alumni were part of the VFX team that worked on the movie. Then game titles like Grand Theft Auto, GTA 5, our alumni were part of the development team there. And apart from that also, as you can see on the slide here, as well as our website, if you were to visit, we have many other prestigious projects that we are proud of, and part of the reason for that would be our faculties come from the industry itself. They are industry professionals who have worked in the industry and they know how to impart the practical education. You can find out more by visiting our website, or you could scan the QR code here and do it right now from your phones. You can also connect with us on social media channels like Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, and LinkedIn. And now coming to the lady of the hour, Miss Nimmi Thomas. She is a narrative designer with rich experience in FRDC design projects with popular brands, as you can see from her intro slide. Stories is the way that we connect with the world, we grow and we learn and we understand the universe around us. But as the technology has evolved, stories are no longer one-dimensional narrations from some book. Stories are now movies, stories are animations, stories are ad films, stories are 3D, stories are 5D, 7D, and so on. So what does it take in today's world to be a successful storyteller and deliver with your prestigious projects or the brands that you're working with? That's exactly what Ms. Nimmi Thomas would be enlightening us upon. So let's give it up for her, and I would like to clear the stage for her. Nimmi, all yours. Welcome.
Thank you, host. Hi, how are you? Am I audible to everyone? Can you guys hear me? I think I have around 50 people attending. Can you all hear me? Yes, okay, awesome, great. So I'm Nimmi Thomas, and I'm a narrative designer. And before I start, I would like to get to know the crowd better, a little better. So I'm going to run a poll now, and I would request you all to answer the same. You can see the poll in your window right now. I guess all of you have answered. I'm going to end the polling in 5 seconds. Okay. So I've shared the results. I think most of you are students and first timers here, and you are from the southern part of India. Okay. I'm also from the south of India. Okay. So I was born in Trivandrum, which is in Kerala, but I have worked in Bangalore. I studied in Bangalore. So for around 6-7 years, I was in Bangalore. So I will start with my presentation now. I hope you all can see the screen, right? Okay, just give me 1 second. Q&A. Okay, so please use your Q&A section if you have anything to ask. All right. So I will be starting with finding your design story. And for today's content, we will start from who is a narrative designer all the way till how to narrate your own story. Okay. So who is a narrative designer? She or he is someone who creates, develops, and unifies a storyline for all the team members to follow. Now, a narrative designer is someone that is usually, the term narrative designer is something that's usually related to the game design industry, where you have a person who writes the storyline as to how the game proceeds. So if the character does so and so, like for example, if the character picks up an apple, this door opens, or how the storyline proceeds and how the environment is structured for the story is what a narrative designer does for the game industry. But according to me, it's not something that is just restricted to the game industry. It's something that can be used across all types of design, including spatial, product design, etc. So what are our tasks? Our main tasks would be, but it's not restricted to content writing, concept creation, graphic design, data analysis and interpretation to an extent, and so on. And what is the difference between a traditional storyteller and a narrative designer? Now, a traditional storyteller may use words, action, song, dance, etc. But irrespective of the story, the medium in which they narrate would be exactly the same. Whereas for a narrative designer, we are not restricted by a medium. In fact, we are responsible for designing the medium in which the narration happens. So, for example, you have a brand which is very fun, vibrant, like say Tropicana, and you have a sports brand like Nike. Now, for both of these, the vibe that you're trying to achieve is very different. So the clientele is also different, and the way you approach the clientele will also be different, right? So how you structure the medium, in which way your story is being narrated, that is what a narrative designer does. All good so far? Um, yes, okay. So what is the role in the industry? Our role would be, okay, awesome. So our role is before the design execution and after the design execution. So suppose you have a design project and you go to the client and you sit with them, they give you the client brief, then you start ideating, you do your research, you organize the research, you strategize, and finally you create a design direction or a storyline which which would be used by everyone to follow. And after this, it is handed over to the next person for execution. Now this may be product designers, architects, engineers, everyone who is involved in the execution of your design. Now they have executed your project. It's completely realized, everything is done. Now the ball is back in your court again. You have to go back to your old story. And now instead of telling your story to the client, you will be telling your story to your customer. This has to go to all the public and they have to understand why you created this particular design. So then you have to market your idea, which goes through maybe publishing in magazines, your social media, exhibition design, information design, and number of methods. So you get to choose. You get to choose your storyline, you get to design your storyline, and you get to choose how it's being said. Right? So this is your role in the industry. Now to go back to basics of what is a story and why is it so important to us? Since forever, humans have connected with stories. It is said that our ancestors used to go hunt and they would come back in the evening, sit around a fire, and talk about how they hunt that day, how they braved the weather, or just daily activities, and so on. So, stories make us think, it makes us believe, it validates why we are here, and gives us a reason to keep moving, to something to aspire to. But and these stories have been used for centuries as a marketing tool. But according to me, it's not just a marketing tool, because many times when you are a narrative designer, you would get just factual information, you would get data, and you would have to narrate it in such a way that the people understand it and the people it catches other people's attention, right? So finding your story and how I weave my narratives. Um, Now, there are n number of methods to find your story. I would be just talking about how I go about it. This is my personal method, and also something that I learned from my experience in the industry as well. So, the first and most important thing for me is research, because this step holds the maximum potential to find all your angles to the design story or the problem. For example, have you all heard of the phrase that says the early bird gets the worm? Mm, you would have, right? So, my father, he would sit me down and he would be like, if the early bird always gets the worm, what about the worm that woke up so early just to be eaten by the bird? And that used to blow my mind. That was a different perspective that completely throws off your the moral of the story, right? So research is something that holds the maximum potential for you to bring in a thought that's completely out of the box. And once you have done your research, you go to data presentation. This step is extremely important, especially in our age, because the information is not in the hands of the learned folk anymore. Earlier, you could just write a research paper, or you could have all the content in facts and in text, and people would read it. And this was only in the hands of the learned folk. But right now, the information is accessible to everyone. And this information must be understandable to everyone as well. Because of the internet, it's not just that you do research for yourself, you want everyone to understand, you want them to act upon this. So the results and analysis, the way you present it, that itself becomes your design. And the third point is, after all this analysis is done and you've presented it to your client, you can have your design direction. So based on all this, you have an idea of a visual pool, and this is something that will be given as a reference for all the designers and architects to follow later on, because you might have a lot of modifications to your design, and you would need something to go back to refer and think about what was your design initially, what was your concept, why are you doing this, right? So that's your design direction. Any questions so far? Let me check the Q&A. No. All right. So research. There's so many methods of research. So, like I said, there are a lot of traditional methods of research, but what can you use now to create a very powerful narrative? So the basics of research, where you have to consider all your stakeholders. This is very basic, and it cannot, irrespective of being traditional or modern, you still have to consider all of this. So the first point is your client. At this step, you study your client, the brand, their heritage, mission, vision. You understand their competitors, their USP, everything. You should get to a point where you are able to sell your client to your client, right? And the second point is you have the user. You have to understand their customer or the customers or the users needs, both quantitatively and qualitatively. You can use a lot of methods like online surveys or workshops, group discussions. You need to have one-on-one talk as well. And the third point is the creator. Now, this is where you are really the bridge between the executioners as well as the ideators, because you should know the physical limitations of, say, an architect or a product designer, whoever is executing it. Suppose you have your idea and it's something like you have a stage design and there's a huge fountain and the set itself should look like flowing water. So under your given budget, it's not necessary that the architect may be able to achieve that because of budget and other constraints. So you should know why they are saying this, what is possible, what is feasible, and what's not. So again, so you should decide your medium or have a fair idea of what is the medium in the beginning itself, so that you can create your story also accordingly. So I think we have a question. What is design sprint? Uh, is it also a part of research? Okay, I will get back to this question. So I will, all the images that I've shown so far, this, this is from my project of 3M, which was done during, while I was working for FRDC. It was done as my graduation project. So have you heard of the brand 3M? Mm, anyone? Okay. So if you haven't heard of this brand, it's okay. There's so many questions on the research. Okay, I think I will. I can answer this for the time being. How important is it to make a questionnaire in order to get to know what the client needs? Um, According to me, it's very important. It doesn't have to be a questionnaire particularly, like the method doesn't have to be that, but it is necessary to know where they're coming from. Uh, I will give you an example right now with the 3M. So someone has said that they didn't know what 3M is. 3M is MNC, is an MNC that is also there in India. Now, you would all know Post-its and the Scotch Brite that you use for washing your dishes and all that. So 3M is a brand that has a huge portfolio of products. But the section that we dealt with was the automobile section. So they have something called 3M Car Care. So 3M Car Care is a brand that is more like a spa for your car. It does your service, your buffing, polishing, washing. It takes care of your car basically. And from there, they wanted to create something like this for bikes as well. Now, the issue with this is in India, cars are seen as something as of a luxury. It's a prestige product. You want to take care of your car. You want to show off your car. The car has to be shiny always. But in case of bikes, a huge chunk of people in India use bikes for just commuting, right? So it's a very daily product. It's just something that you use to go to your work or run errands and come back. So how do you bring an idea of spa for your bikes? So here is where we did the research. Now, for example, the company Nano, when Nano came out with their car of the 1 lakh car, the reason why it was not as well received by the public was again because of this reason, that in India, car is seen as something as a prestige. So it is extremely important to know what your client is having in their head, and what the customer is looking at. You have to be able to understand the both, and bridge the both. So while we were doing this research, we did this research for almost 6 months, and around 800 people were surveyed across 4 cities in India. And there were multiple methods that we used, right? So there was, you had your pilot study and studying about the brand, and we had a quantitative data collection where we sent out questionnaires, we spoke to them, we had one-on-one discussions, we studied the competitors, had workshops, focus groups. And from all this, there's a huge chunk of data that we got, right? Now, this chunk of data, we had to show it to the client at the first step. Now, this chunk of data was so huge that if we had just put it in text, anyone would get bored. But we needed the client to listen to us to understand what we are trying to say, right? So, especially because after this whole data, we realized that there are 4 categories of bikers. Now, you have your super bikers, you have people who are enthusiastic about bikes, you have your daily commuters, and people who ride scooters. And the aspirations of all these 4 categories varied very differently. For example, the super bikers, they really wanted to take care of their bike. They wanted personalization, customization. They wanted different colors, modifications. They were real for them. Their bike was more like a family member. They cared so much about it. Whereas for a commuter, they just wanted to get the service done because it's necessary to get the service done, and they wanted to get it done for the minimum amount possible. So if in 150 rupees you're done with service for 2 months, great. So this was their aspiration, their point of view. So we had to try and bridge uh, one brand under all these, right? We have more questions. Wanted detailed info of user journey mapping. Yes, of course. These are more in-depth research questions, so I will come back to it. Okay. Yeah. So when you are showing when you are showing this data to your client, how do you show this? How is this representation done? Now, have you guys watched the show Patriot Act by Hassan Minhaj? It's there on Netflix, and if you haven't, please go to check it out. It's not so much. I am not trying to promote the content of what he says. Uh, it is, you should go watch it to see how they're doing the data presentation, right? It's a show that has won Emmys, and it's brilliant how they have just facts, and he's telling a story actually. He's just telling facts, but the way it is put across to you, you are really interested. You want to be there, and you want to understand what he's trying to say. So when you have your data, there are 3 basic things that you can look at. One is location. So drop pins to point out the geographical relevance of your data. Maybe in, say, you have some data from Delhi, it may not be relevant in Bangalore, and vice versa. So point out where your data is collected from, and help the people understand that as well. Now, point 2 is color codes. Color codes is, it will be there by default for graphs and such. But here what we're trying to say is we have color codes for each section of survey. For example, if you have places, if you're defining your research by places, you give sub brands, and you kind of do a sort of branding for each of these places as well. For example, you can see the color codes in the image that I've given. So for us, red was Ahmedabad, blue was Delhi, yellow was Chennai, navy blue was Bangalore. So what we did is anytime the client sees a red graphic, they should immediately be able to relate to Ahmedabad. Now, this is a temporary branding. It doesn't have to follow completely in line with what the city has to offer. It is a very temporary branding to help your clients understand the data. And point number three is obviously use imagery, reduce text, and use as much imagery as possible. And today we have accessibility to resources, right? So there are sites like Noun Project where you have to credit the creator or the designer, of course, but you are free to use these images as well. Okay, so now through this whole process, you would have a huge chunk of data and you would have a pretty clear idea of what the customer wants, what the client needs, what it is that you are supposed to be creating. But then you would also have your expectations. What is your personal style? What is your design philosophy? How do you channel all this creativity through a given framework? So how do you make both of these match? The example would be the OSS. This is the design direction that we created from all the data. Um, the story of the OSS is such that now I am also someone who enjoys long rides, and after a long ride in the heat of India, you would want a place to relax and just have some nimbu pani and have Wi-Fi and have your bikes taken care of. So an oasis is a place where you go to relax after walking through the desert, right? So that is how the idea came about, and we created this space which was completely inspired from the oasis. For example, you can see the greenery used in the spatial design. Now, this was not done by me. This was done by the interior designers and the architects. These were their ideas, again, built on the storyline of the oasis. Okay. Okay, so um, do we have more questions on the case study, which is 3M? Um, yes. How can we get in touch with you? Okay, we'll get to that, the infographics. Okay. Okay. The research related questions I will come back to. Anything else? Okay. No. So anything related to 3M? Does anyone have any questions with relation to the case study? Guys, everyone's awake? Had breakfast? Also, what are the skills required to be part of such a big MNC? Okay, so now I didn't work for 3M. I worked for FRDC that did the project for 3M. Okay, so the difference is for MNCs, your work is quite structured. For you have one particular brand, right? If it is 3M, you will be working for 3M. So their design philosophy is a single one, and you will have to be able to adapt to their particular design philosophy and follow that for the entire time period that you are there with that brand, right? Whereas if you are working for a design company that caters to multiple brands, then you can be more flexible. You have to be flexible. You have to be able to understand the design philosophy of each of these brands and structure your design accordingly. It's your personal philosophy or personal idea might have to take a step back there. Whereas with your if you're working for an MNC, you should also be able to completely believe in what they believe in, right? What was there a major impact after the Oasis concept on the brand? Okay, so to be fair, the oasis is a concept that was taken to the last level of execution, but was pulled back after that. Mainly because I think of the reason that super bikers are very less in India, and 3M in general is a premium brand. Um, so it was getting difficult to get all the commuters to believe in this. And this super biker chunk is very small in India compared to the whole bike industry. So as good as this concept and the idea and everything was, it did not take fruition. So I cannot tell you how the brand fared after execution, right? As a young designer in the field of design, what do you suggest how one should take decision while choosing for intern or first job? As a young designer in field of design, what do you suggest one should? I are you asking me if you should work as an intern or take a job? I didn't really get the question. No, no. Okay. Can you further explain the question, please? Mm, I mean, regarding choosing to work in a studio or an MNC, how should you take a decision? Yeah, so like I said, while you're studying, you try and figure out what your design philosophy is. If you end up with a philosophy that you are very particular about, like for example, I'm still a student. I'm doing my masters in SEPT, which is in Ahmedabad. Now, there are many of my classmates who believe in a particular concept, such as minimalism. So, if you are a very ardent believer of minimalism and you work for, say, a company like KFC, it does not work, right? Because KFC is it's not minimal at all. It's a company that really wants everything vibrant and colorful and wants a lot of people to come in and everything, right? So again, your own philosophy is clashing with the philosophy of your brand. So then so it's an issue there. But if you can get an MNC that works very well with your minimalism idea, then great. Another way is if you're a designer who has multiple ideas, like you are able to mold your ideas based on what the design philosophy is of different brands, then I think you should go work for a design company, because you will uh, get to experience multiple brands. You will get to your port your portfolio will be pretty wide, and you will have different variants. Like for example, I have worked for hospitality and retail and residential, and the, my portfolio is very wide, especially because of working from a design company. So I would say that. And next question is how to explain UI UX for three age categories: 5-year child, 30-year men, 60-year-old person. Okay, great question. Okay, UI UX, if you had to explain it to a 5-year-old child, but of my generation, I would say you don't have to explain, because we didn't have or we didn't care about it at that time. For us, we just had to go out and play. But I realized that nowadays, I've seen iPhones and stuff in the hands of a 5-year-old as well. Um, See, UI UX as a term is something that is necessary for you to know as a designer, but it is not necessary for a child to know, because they are already using it. How do I explain this? Many a times the design concepts that you have thought of, you would have used it before you get to know about it. For example, window displays. You have been looking at window displays since you are a child. You go shopping, you will see a window display. But what is a window display? How is visual merchandising done? These are things that you will get to know after you become a designer, right? So there are multiple ways to say. I think the simplest way to do this, irrespective of the age category, is if you have used a smartphone or a website, you tell them that how you interact with this device. That is what UI UX is. So that would be my answer. A lot of times it happens that clients have a different thought process, which is not really possible or applicable for the brand. And the solution you have chalked out fits perfectly. How to convince the client that what you're asking for is either not possible or won't suit or okay. Research. This is the part where I'm talking about. If you are able to show your client with facts, you say, these are the things, these are the facts, this is what is possible, this is why we are telling you to do this is why you're saying this won't work. Okay, so Gopinath Balaji has raised his hand. Just give me 2 minutes, I will get to you. So once you have your research all planned out, and if you are able to show the research in a way that the client understands, then it's a fact. You are telling them that it's not something like, okay, I like blue, so I've given blue here. That's not what you're trying to say. You're saying that blue works perfectly for your brand at this point because of a number of reasons, which is why you're suggesting the color blue. So if you're able to give a particular you're able to justify your answer and give reasons to why you've done what you've done, I think you should be able to convince your client, because that's what I've always done. um, are there any resources we can refer to for improving our storytelling overall? Yes, that's where I have spoken about imagery and location, and color coding. Now, I think we can come back to this question after the next two case studies might help answer the question better. How can narrative design? This also will be answered in the next case studies. Hi, how does narrative? That also. All right. So, mm, what are the opportunities in strategic design and social design in India, like Standard and Pride are offering such courses as D-School and all? Okay. Before I go to Akansha's, the who raised his hand? Um, Can you write the question, please, if it's possible, or can you speak? I can't hear you if you were speaking. Gopinath Balaji? Okay, so I will come back to Gopinath also then. What are the opportunities in strategic design and social design in India? Um, so you have two ways to go for this. You can work with private brands. You can have your own entrepreneurial firm. As I think you can also work with now. I don't think you can get a government job as a strategic designer right now, but you can work with the government with departments such as CHED, which is the Heritage and Environment Development, and so for strategic design, there are multiple things that you're looking at. You can look at through a tourism aspect, how you so right now I'm in Stuttgart. So when we go to each of these monuments or any touristy places, they have a design or a branding of its own, right? Now that is not something that's really there in India right now. Sorry, excuse me. And that is something that you could completely use. It's something that's missing, and you could add on to this. There are some companies doing this right now. You have to find them. You have to there are opportunities. There are definitely opportunities, and with time we are gaining more knowledge of the same and trying to bridge our gap with design and what is there in India right now. What is the future of design in India? That's a huge question. Okay, so I think I will go to the next two case studies and then come back to these questions. Okay. So this is called Nicht mein, which literally means not mine. It's in German. This was a project that I did very recently. We are a group of students that came for exchange to Stuttgart in Germany, and I will give you a rough timeline. So we reached here on in February, and by March mid itself, our colleges are closed. We're asked to work from home. This is very recent. This is happening during the lockdown and everything. So by March, April, we noticed that a lot of people are cleaning their homes and they're throwing out furniture on the streets. Now, Germany is a place which has a huge waste segregation system. Okay, and it's a very well-designed system. You have to segregate your trash into 4 or 5 sections, and you have different dustbins, and you even have to segregate the color of bottles. Like you have a bin for white bottles, you have a bin for brown bottles, you have a bin for green bottles. It's to that extent. It's very efficient. But what we noticed is that during this lockdown, the furniture was being thrown out on the streets, and we were trying to figure out why people are doing this, right? So the main reason they were doing it is because they wanted other people to also have a chance to take this furniture home if required. Because most of these, what they were throwing out, they weren't bad furniture. They were stuff that could be used. It could some were broken, but even those were like raw materials you could use to create something more, like wooden planks broken off from drawers and table legs, etc. You could totally create new items from this. Now, in May, what we did is we tried to create a platform that was designed to promote reuse and upcycling of all these products. And in June, we presented this project and had a live upcycle session. And what we created was a product which is given to a local NGO. So this was done in an area of Stuttgart called Rot. And what we had to do is we had to design the common areas in such a way that we facilitated socializing. You have your social distancing, obviously, but in spite of that, you should be able to interact with the people and get the people to talk. So this is what we had to do. It's a challenging thing to do because you have your social distancing, but you have to talk to people. So that was our design brief. And that's why you can see our design is very circular. This was a pattern that we saw emerging during this lockdown. A lot of designers were embracing the circular culture. The main reason being, if you stand on two ends of the diameter of a circle, the distance of the diameter is considered to be the minimum distance that you are required to keep, right? So now we could have shown this as just plans, elevations, and just an architectural project. But what we ended up doing is we created an animated video for the people to understand. Now, if we are showing this plans and sections to a common man in Stuttgart, they wouldn't care, right? What they would want to know is how to use this platform. So we created a video where it shows them the social media aspect, how social media is involved, how you can find out where this place is, and you can come pick up items that you like, leave items that you don't want anymore, and you can come and have a renovation of your house. and click pictures and post it on this online platform as well. So what you see on the right side are screenshots from our video. Um, so yeah, this is one way that we used our story. Why it's called niched mine is because if you were take a product from there, it's not really yours. If you leave a product there, it's again not yours. So that's why we wanted to have a culture of non-possession, and that was our main storyline, and that's why it's called niched mine. Um, so I think I was able to answer a few questions through this. So we had an architectural project, and instead of showing it as an architectural product, it became an animated video in this one. In the previous one, we had a story which came out as an architectural project, which not architecture, it was an interior design project. So for each storyline, you get to decide what is the medium in which you want to narrate this, right? Okay, now we can take a few more questions. Um, sec. Yes. Okay. Hmm. Okay, what a beautiful presentation. Is it a group work? Oh, thank you so much. Yes, it's a group work. It was a group of 3 students, 2 from SEPT and one from this college called ITU in Turkey. So we are all exchange students that came to Stuttgart. So there is actually there was a course called IMEARD in which was offered by SEPT. Right now also you can avail the exchange offer. What our course is, it's called International Master of Interior Architecture Design. And what we do is you have 3 semesters that you study in your home college, and 1 semester you have to go to a different partner university and you study there. So we have 4 partner universities. So if you are studying in SEPT India, you do 3 semesters in SEPT and 1 semester you go abroad. And vice versa, if you're doing 3 semesters in Germany, for 1 semester you can go to India or Turkey or so. Okay, so that is what. Any other questions, guys, on Ishmael? What was scholarships about? Can anyone apply for it? Yes, there are scholarships in SEPT and in the Stuttgart College as well. Uh, there are merit-based scholarships. So if I think when you have your entrance exam, if you come in the top 3, you can apply for the scholarship. Mm. You have means-based scholarship as well, but I have to look further into it. Have I answered a little bit about how does narrative design come into the picture of architecture? I think I have. So narrative design, there is actually a course called Narrative Environments in UAL, University of Arts London. And these are the people that I think they are the pioneers of this course. I and I keep following their page. You can also try it. It's called Narrative Environments by UAL in Instagram. You can check it out. So they have these multiple ways of bringing a narrative into a space. Now this can be exhibition design, set design, scenography, many ways. So it's about your story and how you show it architecturally as well. Also, how about a combination of animation and architect came, like the idea and also the skills? Okay, so I think it was mainly because of the teammates. 2 of my so I'll give you a little bit of my background. I am actually a communication designer from NIFT Bangalore. I did fashion communication, and I specialized in visual merchandising, and then I started working for retail design. And from retail design, I started working for other interiors as well, like hospitality and mm, residential and stuff. From there, I started feeling that I'm doing communication for architects So I should learn the architecture medium even further. And so I joined SET. So this was my graph. So the two students who were in my team, both of them were architects, while I was a communication designer. So we wanted to bring it together. We wanted to bring both of these together, and I think that's my next point of um, transdisciplinary design, right? So this is one of the key points of this era, that multiple designers must work together. You can work with just one idea. It's you can specialize in the same, but it's always more interesting when you have a fusion of multiple types of design that work together. It's not necessary that you are skilled very well in all of them. You just need to be able to communicate to the other person. For example, I'm doing graphics for architects, but it's not necessary that I should know architecture A to Z. I cannot do a building design ground up, but I should be able to speak the language of the architect to tell them what I'm looking for and what they are looking for, and be able to communicate basically. So I am a strong voucher for transdisciplinary design. Which softwares are used for these projects, like for designing the animation videos and all? Adobe softwares, mainly Adobe softwares, um, like Photoshop, Illustrator, Premiere Pro, and we used InDesign as well for the panels and the the layouting of. So what you see here, uh, these are panels that we presented eventually for the exhibition. So those were done in InDesign. Then yeah, so mainly these only, and of course you can use Flash and yeah, so mainly Adobe softwares. But in case you are not of a graphic design industry and you want to explore these as well, I would suggest, now this is not something that the graphic designers would suggest, but for me, anyone that can do something beautifully is a designer. um, we used to have a faculty in our college who would say, he didn't ask us to, like, we were doing window display and we had to do visual merchandising. So he would tell us, go to your streets, go see how the street food stalls have displayed their food, how they are being shown in a very attractive way. And we weren't looking at the great designers of India or the world at that time. We are looking at someone who doesn't even identify himself as a designer and how they are keeping their merchandise in a beautiful way and presenting it to the public, right? So for me, anyone, irrespective of whether they call themselves a designer or not, if they can do something well and the purpose is served and it is done beautifully, is a designer. So there are tools such as Canva or Noun Project and I think FreePix. So all of these websites have a lot of resources that you can use. You have templates, and anyone who feels handicapped with the Adobe softwares, if you haven't learned or if you have an issue with dealing with them, you can use these as well. These are much simpler, and it's something that anyone can use and anyone can learn very quickly. And if you need guides, which I probably think you won't, but if you do need it, you can check out Coursera courses on learning these softwares and websites as well. Design degree is important to work as an industrial designer. Of course, if you want to get a job, design degree is important. Doesn't matter. I mean, it does matter from where as well, but design degree is really important to get a job as a designer. Um, but when I said for me, anyone is a designer is not on a job basis. It's because, for example, my mom, she does interior design and she's a homemaker. So she keeps her house beautifully. And she, in fact, there are many times when I would have learned some interior design and I would have all these crazy ideas, and I'm trying to find the right color and make everything work. And she would just put like two chairs, two flower pots or something, and it might end up looking much prettier than what I am doing. So it's a there is a lot of natural talent also that comes. Of course, when you are looking for a job, you need a degree, but for me, anyone who can do something beautifully is a designer. um Anything else? Resources, I have talked about it. Apart from Canva, any other sites? um See, the reason why I recommend Canva is because their uh, the amount of products that they're looking at is not limited. Like they have videos and images and social media posts, and from making your resume to making a full video about yourself, they have resources for all of these. It's not particular to one type. They even have, I think, websites and presentation templates as well. But for most of the other sites that I've looked at, it is particular to one thing. Either you can make your social media poster, or you can make your presentation template, or you can make your video. It's one of them. So for Canva, there are a number of things that you can look at one platform. So that's why I would say Canva. But like I mentioned before, I think if you want, say, images or like animated images, you can go for FreePix, or you can look at Noun Project for icons. And yeah, anything else, guys? Okay, so then I will go to the last case study. So this is called Make My Space. This was also a project done with FRDC. This is a sub brand of FRDC called Make My Space, and what they wanted to do was have a private interior design putty, which caters to quick and efficient design of your homes. Um, so this was a brand that we had to build from ground up. We had to design the services. What are the kinds of services and products that we are going to offer, at what cost we are going to offer it to the people, what are we trying to say to the people. Uh, this was a completely entrepreneurial sort of project, because we were creating this brand from ground up. Now at this point, you can see that I've used words. Now we are obviously architects and interior designers. We could have used another method as well, but at this point we have used words. We have gone back to our basics to narrate the story. The reason being, if you're on a website and you are looking for how to design your space, what you want is you want the words to speak to you. Like if you see, our motto was, dreams can be big or small, but sorry, dreams shouldn't be big or small, they should be beautiful, just like your home. So now this is a saying that really speaks to you. You're like, okay, I may not have a big house, but I can still have it. I can still make it as beautiful as they come. So then you had your packages, and we had the methods of how to go about it. You have your discover, dream, design, do up. So we were using words at this point. So essentially what I'm trying to say is, you have your story, and it has to be relevant to your particular brand. It has to be unique to it. You are as good as doing advertising or content writing for your brand, and from there you get to decide in which medium you are narrating it to. So all of this are part of the narrative designer. Yay, we've got more questions. Okay. Layouting is really nice. How you worked on it? Any source, or it comes with practice? Of the case studies, yeah. So I have used a mix of Canva and InDesign. Now it comes a lot with practice. The reason being, I was someone, I am someone who thinks that anyone can use Canva. And there was a time when I had a client, they also had a startup. And obviously, I have my fees for certain for the services that I give. And since they were a startup, they were having budget issues and they weren't able to, uh, you know, give me as much as I usually charge. So what I try to do is I try to educate them with Canva. So I made a template in Canva and told them that they can modify it with just certain words or certain images that you change in your product would be done. Now for me, I thought this is very simple, but they tried a lot, but they weren't able to get there, and they didn't want to as well. So they were like, I know there are templates in Canva, but whatever I do, it's not coming as pretty as how you're doing. And I'm like, I don't know why it's not happening. So I guess a lot of it comes with practice. You have to keep looking at your resources. You may have templates, you may have all these resources, but you still have to keep practicing. Yes, at the end, it's beauty which makes happy and productive. Yes, I agree. Please speak about the differences between Photoshop, Illustrator, and InDesign. Okay, this is something which I think everyone should know, all designers and people who use the softwares. Uh, Photoshop works with images, and by images, I okay. So there are two types of images. When I'm speaking in a very layman's language right now. So there's one type of image where if you zoom in, like you completely zoom in, you will be able to see pixels at one point. And there's another type of image where how much ever you zoom in, it's not pixels. You won't see the by pixels are those small boxes, and you can see the different colors. Okay, so these are the two types of images. Now the main difference is Photoshop works with the images which have pixels. Illustrator, whatever you draw in Illustrator, won't have pixels. They are vector images. Okay, so how to manipulate Photoshop is Photoshop is better when you have images and you're trying to make a collage out of it. You already have a set uh, of images and you're trying to make a collage out of it, then that's Photoshop. For Illustrator, it's better when you are doing from scratch, when you're drawing something out of scratch. Like if you're doing logo design or say any illustrations for social media or digital paintings and all that, Illustrator is better. And InDesign, I feel is completely different from the two. For Photoshop and Illustrator, it's about image creation, right? But for InDesign, what InDesign is used for is it's used for layouting. So if you have a book and sorry, you can't sit and design every page of the book, right? So what InDesign does is you can create templates, and then you can just drag and drop in images and the text, and it's mainly used for layouting and documentation. So that's InDesign. Now let me see more questions. Any other questions, guys? Mm, we are nearing the end of the presentation. So if you have more questions, please ask now. Can we get your mail ID? Sure. Yeah. I will put it in the chat box to all panelists and attendees. Um, and okay, I have sent my contact and email IDs of whoever had asked. how can we get in touch? Instagram, my ID is, I think you can search for our internet. This is my username for Instagram. Okay, how did you choose the content? What's the process of making perfect content? Okay, so first I think I would talk about the word perfect. So there is no perfect design. So this is something that bugs a lot of designers because we are always on a timeline. We're always on a timeline, and if you are, suppose you have a project and you have to finish it in 2 days, you know for a fact that if you get 2 weeks for this, you can do a much better work. But within the 2 days, within your timeline, you should be able to perform and you should be able to give. And whatever you give at that time is perfect. You should, at some point, you have to stop working and tell yourself that this is fine, this is good. So I don't believe there is something called perfect content. But how did I choose the content? Now, these were all my projects. Like, so I can talk about them openly, and I know inside out of these projects. So this is why I choose these projects. But of all the projects that I've done, why I chose these is because uh, the way the story is narrated is different for all three. Right. For the first one, you had space design. For the second one, you had animation and video. And for the third one, I was using words. So, and they are all spatial related projects, right? And but the way I've approached it, the storyline, it's all very different for all three, which is why I had chosen these projects. um More questions? Okay. Best sites to get free vectors. Yes, like I said, Freepix has free vectors. Again, whenever you use free content, please make sure you credit the creators. Don't just use them. Make sure you have tagged all the creators. What is the future of design? Can we get your email ID? Done. What is the future of design in India? Okay, I would go back to the part where I say transdisciplinary design is the future of India, because uh, we are seeing transdisciplinary design all across the world. It's happening already right now. And India, when it comes to design, is a little slow to grab on. So uh, it's already happening. It's already there everywhere across the world. I mean, not, of course, we have taken a hit because of the pandemic and stuff, but otherwise it's happening. And it's a field that actually, it's not if it's a field that can keep working, because a lot of us still work on our laptops. So during the entire lockdown period also, we were working. Then maybe like 2 days. I know we weren't saving the world, and of course, I'm so grateful for all the people and all the doctors and people who are working there. But we have also been working almost every day, maybe like 2 or 3 days we got a rest. Um, so yeah, so I think the future of design in India is not limited to being in an office or working in an office. It's something that you can do and be a part of right now as well. Can someone become a good graphic designer even without being able to draw? Okay, yes, definitely. Um, Now this is something that can get you different opinions from different people. But for me, I think it's possible. The reason being, I can't draw. I can. I mean, it has gotten better with practice. Again, going back to the point of practice. Um, the more you draw, you will reach a point where in your mind you think you can't draw it, but your hands will be able to draw it. Like the amount you practice, you will get to that point where you think that you won't be able to draw it, but it will come to you. So keep practicing. And see, drawing is not necessary, but it is one of the most important skill sets that could help you get better. So that's the thing. It's more like, let's say you are an athlete. Okay, now it's not necessary that you should have good shoes to run, but if you have good shoes, you can do better, right? So drawing is like that, and it's just a helping factor, and it's always best to practice as much as you can with it. I'll just drink a little water. Sorry, guys. Okay, more questions. How important is knowing most rendering softwares for an interior designer, and is it important to have one style and go by it, or should it depend on the client project? Okay, I think how you render really again depends on what you're looking for. So if you are dealing with a residential project, okay, now a homeowner wouldn't necessarily know the nuances of design or how we represent architectural projects and stuff, right? So if you have i- um, if you have your plans and sections, it's not necessary that they'll get a full idea of what you're vouching for. But if you have a very well rendered image, then they get the grasp of it very quickly, right? So it depends on which industry you're working at. But for example, in set, they tell us not to use renders as much. They want us to have illustrations and uh, have the graphics be done in interesting ways of the interior design, right? So it depends on where you're working at and what your clientele is. And is it important to have one design style and go by it, or should it depend on the client project? This is something that I spoke about before. Um, it's okay to have both, I feel, because there are a lot of architects in the world who completely follow one particular design style. They have one philosophy and they go by it, and they are very famous and very well known architects as well. But there are also people who do it depending on the client and the project as well. So I think the world needs both. You need people who believe in one particular philosophy and is also able to preach that philosophy to the world. But you also need people who can work irrespective of what your own personal design philosophy is. How to begin with digital painting? Why so much digital painting in current time and social media? um why so much of digital painting in current time would be because you have accessibility to these resources. 10 years back, we didn't have a lot of these resources. So, and we didn't have access to learn these resources as well. So now it's open to the public. You're able to use it. So that is why you are seeing a lot of it. How to begin with digital painting? YouTube tutorials. So there are so many tutorials on the YouTube. Please go check it out. It will, of course, you can take up a course that teaches you Photoshop, but it's not necessary because you have a lot of free content right now. The only thing is you should be able to motivate yourself. You should be able to say, okay, I will watch this video today and I will make 3 paintings, and I will watch the next set of videos today and I will make 3 paintings. You have to motivate yourself and watch these and practice. um okay, what did you pursue in your undergrad, and like then how did you proceed, like as your job profile, because not everyone is fully aware of the term narrative design? Oh, okay. So like I said in the beginning, narrative designer is something uh, that is related to the game design industry. What Why I call myself a narrative designer is something that uh, I call myself a narrative designer. That's the thing that I have coined this term for myself. It wasn't like I joined a company and they told me that you are a narrative designer. No, this by qualification I am either a communication designer or because I'm a interior architect designer. These are my qualifications, but I call myself a narrative designer because this is what I do for every project. What I contribute to the most is the narrative section, which is why I call myself a narrative designer. Now, what I pursued in my undergrad is communication design, which is fashion communication in NIFT Bangalore, and I specialized in visual merchandising. And so we had 5 or 6 main subjects that you had to study while you were in college. One was graphic design, visual merchandising, photography, advertising, and content writing, journalism, basically. So we had all of this. And the part which I specialized in was strategy and visual merchandising, strategy for brands. And from there, instead of working in an MNC, like, of course, there are brands such as Van Heusen and a lot of Arvind Madhura brands that you can get into one of those brands itself as a visual merchandiser. But I started working for FRDC, and they have a multitude of projects, but the ones that I worked in were retail projects. And so it was going back. What people usually do is they do architecture, and then they do interior design, and then they do retail design, and then they go for visual merchandising and so on. That's the path they usually take. I went all the way back. I started from visual merchandising, I went to retail design, and after doing retail, uh, I was also part of other projects that did the residential offices and hospitality and other types of interiors. And then I felt like I should learn more about the interiors because I'm doing the narrative section for them. Like, I'm creating the storyline, I'm writing content for magazines and social media, and I felt like I should learn more about interior design. So then I joined SEPT, and in SEPT, my course is called International Master in Interior Architecture Design. So by qualification, I'm not a narrative designer, but this is what I do for all projects. So which is why I would call myself a narrative designer. Was there any difficulty in going back? Of course. It was really hard. Of course, it's really hard, especially because like when I joined SEPT, the first semester itself, because it's a master's course, you are expected to be fluent in how architects represent their work, right? And I hadn't drawn a proper plan ever. And I had to like bring out plans, sections, elevations, all this in a span of 6 months. And luckily, I had a good command of the softwares. I had learned Revit, AutoCAD, 3ds Max, all of these. I had learned the softwares during my free time and during my undergrad. So it wasn't difficult for me to grasp the concepts, but it is extremely difficult going back. Uh, it's better to go forward, but it's not something that I regret, especially because um, I am still not someone who would say that I'm an architect. I'm not going to take a project saying that I'm an architect. I would be a narrative designer still, right? So I just wanted to learn the language of architects. So it is difficult, but you can still do it. Um, okay, how to do this? I answered. Was there? Okay, any graphic novels or books on design you would recommend? Um, Books on design. Okay. So I would say, so here's the thing. I would, the books that I have read aren't books on how to design. It is mostly on what all you could think about while designing. Like, for example, I haven't really read books on how to do a store design because I learned that from college. But I would read books on how the customer thinks while they are in a store and how you could improve your design on it. So um, there are many books like that of I think it's called uh, sorry, I'm not able to get the names right now. It's let me just check. It's called um, um, okay, I'm still not able to get the name of the books, but it talks about how people shop in stores, and like, for example, when you walk into a store, you go you tend to walk through the right side and look at the merchandise on the right side before going to the left. Or there are a number of things. The main research was done by this brand called Envirocell Books. Let me just check again. The author is Paco Underhill. His books are great. You should definitely check it out. This is related to retail design. Then what else? Can you run the portal? Of course, yes. Uh, Hope you have not missed a journey around Stuttgart by slowest trains journey to Heidelberg is one such experience. Of course, yes, done that. Awesome, great. Thank you. I will contact you. Anything else? Okay, great. So I will oh shit, I had one more slide, sorry. So yeah, so mainly when you tell your story, three things that you can look at. This is just standard conclusion slide. Uh yes, Paco Underhill is the name. Yes. Uh Empathy, fluency, and creativity. So know your audience, understand their emotional language, and learn how to speak the same. Fluency is be clear and efficient in the medium that you use. Um, it You don't have to know all the media, but whatever you use to tell your story, be fluent in that. And of course, we cannot work without creativity. So I will go to the next polling. Can you guys tell me how the session was? Did you like it? Did you not like it? Um, can you all vote, guys? Okay, I think 10 more seconds. Few more people left to vote. Please give us the feedback, guys. Thank you to you too. Thank you guys for listening in. It was a great audience and great questions. So thank you. Now I will thank you so much, guys. I will end the session now. It was great meeting everyone. Hope you have a great career ahead in design. Thank you. Mm.